Welcome to the FullyCrypto podcast.
Hello and welcome to the FullyCrypto podcast, your home of quality cryptocurrency news, opinion, analysis, and more. My name is Mark Hunter, and in today's episode, I'm speaking with Clem Chambers, the CEO of ADVFN and Online Blockchain, whose DeFi project Umbria Network aims to improve the user experience of DeFi protocols, as well as tackling thorny issues like transaction fees. Clem has over 4 decades of experience in the tech and fintech sectors, which he's brought to the crypto and blockchain space, so he's certainly a guy worth listening to. I hope you enjoy our conversation. So Clem, welcome to the FullyCrypto podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's great to be here.
How are you doing on this chilly winter's evening?
Well, I've got to admit, I'm in Monaco, so it's not very chilly.
Oh, it's all right for some.
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
So I'd like to talk to you tonight, if I may, about Umbria, which I believe is your DeFi project, and as well as what you guys are trying to achieve over there. A bit of a broader conversation about the DeFi movement in general and what that might look like in the future.
Sure, great.
Fantastic. So before we kind of crack on with Umbria itself, why don't you explain to me how you got into crypto and blockchain and how you kind of fell down that rabbit hole?
Well, I think I probably dived in head first into that rabbit hole. The way it really kind of kicked off was back in the day, 2012, probably 2013. And one of my technical people said, yeah, you've heard about this Bitcoin thing. We really need to get that price feed on ADVFN, which is a financial website I run in the UK. And in the US, it's called Investors Hub. But they're very, very large financial information communities. And I went, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, that's that crazy coin that I actually had a look at recently. And what I'd done was actually the wrong way around. What I'd done is I'd gone on to Silk Road, because I'd heard a lot about Silk Road and I just wanted to see all about that. Because part of my job is to plumb the depths of what is happening and where it's going and what's interesting and what's wild and what's great and what's weird. Because that always kind of leads on to what's going to happen next. So, I went on to tour and went into Silk Road, and much to my amazement, saw people selling piles of cash, which I thought was quite interesting. But obviously, if you don't think like a drug kingpin, that would seem strange. But if you are a drug kingpin, selling cash for stuff is really what you kind of a large part of your business is, getting rid of your cash and all the other crazy stuff that Silk Road was selling. And then there was this Bitcoin. And I'd heard about it and I thought of buying some. And I thought, yeah, I'll buy some. I mean, yeah, what's going to be 8 or 9 cents? And it was like $12. Oh, $12? Oh, no, it wasn't 12. It's $80. I think you've got to be kidding me. Well, you can probably find out what the date is from the price. You've got to be kidding me. $80 for some sort of crazy token. Well, I mean, I like the idea, but no way am I going to buy a few thousand of those at $80. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. And I'm not going to buy 7 because that's going to be a joke, right? The 7 digital crazy coins. Yeah, right. I mean, that's not a fun investment, is it? You want to buy 1 million, don't you? You want to see it go up a cent, that kind of thing. So anyway, I didn't do any more, and I came away from Silk Road thinking that A, tour was very slow and rubbish, and B, that somebody was going to come around and break somebody's knees over Silk Road, and Bitcoin was already had its day by the time I discovered it. But anyway, we put Bitcoin up on the site as a data feed, and that was really the beginning of it. And then at a moment in about 2016, I thought, well, we've really got to get our skates on here because this is getting kind of spicy. And then of course 2017 came along, by which time I built up a pretty interesting position in Bitcoin, and there's nothing like making a ton of money to make you kind of like something. And then it all crashed, but that was obviously coming because as somebody that's operated in stock market information and communities for, well, these days 20 years, but then 17, what's going to happen. You know the shape of these things. They go up like a rocket and down like a rock. And that everyone runs around screaming, saying, "Oh, it's going to go to million, billion, trillion," and as soon as it appears on the 9 o'clock news, that's it for that run, and it's all over. So I managed to get out at 17,000 or 18,000, I can't remember. I'm very happy to do so, and then carried on going, following the pathway there. I mean, I've been writing about Bitcoin and crypto in Forbes now for years. And my first article was saying this Bitcoin stuff it's crazy. It's a bubble. It's rubbish. And then about 60 days later, I wrote another piece saying, "Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. This is oh dear. Oh, the penny just dropped. Oh, this is big." And I've been writing. I've been pretty good. I think I've called pretty much most of the turns in the market, both down and up since then. And it's still on the internet, so anybody can read it. And it irritates me somewhat when I say to people, things like, "Hey, you need to buy LBRY. LBRY is going to be huge." Rarible being the NTF thing. And everyone goes, yeah, Clem, yeah, you're always right. And then when it goes up 70% like today, and I'm speaking to people, say, "Did you get into that LBRY?" "Oh no, I didn't get round to it." No. I say, "Oh, what?" but anyway, that's life. So for me, the once the Bitcoin epiphany had happened, it was just like obviously going to be a huge thing, and where that huge thing goes, you've got to follow it, because it's where all the fun is and where all the profit is. Because at the end of the day, even today, there's only really 5% of the world in it, because everybody else is either too scared or not technical enough or really not into financial instruments or doesn't have the money, or 57 reasons why they're not in it. So it's really still only the tip of the spear of this. And I thought Bitcoin stroke Ethereum was the big one. But then when the DeFi thing happened, it started to happen a couple of years ago, but really the middle of last year. And you look at this stuff and you go, well, we've got to do this. And I don't really fully understand it. I just know it's like the old joke about committee describing an elephant, putting their hand under the blanket and saying, "Oh, there's a long thing in here, and there's some big teeth." But you can't really understand it as well as you might immediately. It's not digestible. So you really have to get stuck in. You have to buy the things. You have to use the products. You have to, try them out. And in fact, I got given a lot of money by these projects as being an early adopter. Uniswap gave me a couple of $1,000s worth of their coins out of the blue on the basis that I'd actually done a trade on Uniswap back last summer. And, which is nice. But it also underlines one of the wonderful things about crypto and DeFi in particular, is that it pays you. When you make a mess of things, it doesn't really cost you much. And when you do things well, it pays you big. The money flows downhill, not up. It doesn't go from the small guy to the big guys. It goes from the big guys to the little guys. It's a reversal of the entropy of money. And that is what makes it so massive. It's a complete change to the social fabric of the way money works. And money flows downhill. And it's amazing. Nothing more obvious than if you go on Compound and see them paying you 10% interest on the dollar, and then going to Goldman Sachs and logging on to Marcus and getting offered 0.5%. Goldman Sachs will give you 1%, and Compound will give you 10%. And if you borrow from them, you can borrow a coin off them at 10%, and they'll give you another 14% negative interest rates. So you're actually paying minus 4%. Right? Yeah. And you go, well, this obviously is all wrong, isn't it? It's against God, and it's all going to come unstuck, and it can't be right. It must be a Ponzi scheme. But when you look at it, you see, well, people are borrowing US DC because they want to buy Ethereum with it. And a stable coin is worth $1, always be worth $1. And people are borrowing that dollar at 10% to buy Ethereum, which then proceeds to go up 10% in a day. So why wouldn't you borrow it at 10%? And boy, you get paid 14% to borrow it. So you've actually been paid 4% to take the money, put it into Ethereum and make a profit, which is something I documented in one of my Forbes pieces a few months ago. And the business model is simple. If you are lending it at 6 and they're borrowing it at 10, that's a 4% profit to the to Compound. And Compound is trying to issue its token, its governance token, to the members of the public. So it is paying you in its tokens so that you can be a shareholder of it. And they want it to be part of this new decentralized thing. And therefore it's giving away its equity, which, if it was Amazon, is $1 trillion. Right? So it all makes perfect business sense, apart from the fact you could say, well, if they held onto the coins themselves, they'd all get horribly rich. Well, most of them are already horribly rich, and they will get more horribly rich from the ones that they get to keep. So at every level, it makes logical business sense what they're doing. But I'm not getting 1% from Goldman Sachs. I'm getting 10% from Compound, which is 1,000% more. Well, that is actually economically shattering on many levels. And that is, why wouldn't you want to get involved in a dynamic like that? And, at the end of the day, there's lots of challenges to make these enterprises a success. And one of them is obviously technology. It is really bleeding edge stuff. It is incredibly difficult, but I have lived on that bleeding edge for most of my life. So I know I can smell the whiff of gunpowder and grape shot in that zone. So we have a bit of an advantage there. We've got some very, very, very good engineering, and that's an advantage. And we've worked in the public listed space as a public company listed in London for 20 years, which is one of the longest AIM companies ever to be listed. And so we've got I think, potentially the missing ingredient, which a lot of these people miss, which is trust. You really, really, really got to try to be as clear and as transparent and as trustable in this non-trusting environment as possible, because I've been playing with all these different anything I can find. I'll stick some money in and see how it goes. And I was on one project yesterday on the weekend, and so it's not working properly. So I go onto their support line on Discord, and the customer support guy comes out, and his avatar is a pirate. And I've only got $5,000 in their platform, and this individual who comes across like about 11, and who's got an avatar as a pirate, comes to me and starts insulting me, even though I'm asking him, how does this all work? And I go, oh yes, that's what I want to know, guys. Thank you very much for your help. Obviously, I pull my money out of that. But on the other hand, you go to another one which is just as nebulous, and you talk to the people, and they're more mature, and they've got a better attitude, and their software works, and they don't show up looking pretending to be Pirates of the Caribbean. You're more likely to leave money with those. Well, you do leave money with them, but also you won't be just risking 4 figures. You're much more open to risking 5, and then over maybe 2 or 3 years, 6 figures with people like that. And the risk in the DeFi landscape is great, and the opportunity is huge, and it's all about navigating that. But I think that with our intersection of skills, we can be one of the players in DeFi, and we can be one of those players that will be there in 10 years, because people who will be around in 10 years will be a couple of orders of magnitude bigger than what we're looking at today. Because companies that are now 3 billion, that'll be 300 billion in 20 years. People that are 100 million will be 10 to 20 billion in 3 or 4 years. So, there's a lot of fabulous opportunity in this zone. And what makes it absolutely thrilling is that it is so fabulous an opportunity for all the stakeholders. And it's really more about stakeholders than anything, because the people that are the capital providers to these DeFi projects are just normal people, and they're the ones getting the benefit from it. It turns the closed shop and the oligarchy of financial services inside out. And you could say democratizes it and all that sort of stuff, but it turns it inside out. So rather than people on the street funding big office blocks full of people earning $3 million bonuses, or CEOs earning $100 million bonuses, underwriters taking their fat cuts, market makers hanging everybody upside down by their ankles, they get the opportunity to take over those roles on a transparent basis. And, that is a fabulous prospect, not just because, people in financial services have got such a terrible reputation that they almost make politicians look good, but because of the amazing efficiencies that will bring about, and the education in finances that it will bring to the masses that they so sorely need, and the ability for, rather than their money going uphill to the elite, money from the elite going downhill to them. So, it's kind of, the more you think about it, the more exciting it is. And the major danger is the elites will just try to stamp it out because, it ruins their oligopoly.
Hmm. Well, that's something we'll come on to later on when we kind of talk about the DeFi space and the kind of future of it and where it sits. You've described how you see the DeFi space at the moment and what it could potentially achieve, but also some of the drawbacks. What is it then that Umbria is looking to change, and where does it fit in the current and what you see as the future DeFi narrative?
Well, I think one of the exciting things about this whole space is it's incredibly cooperative. Now, if you go back to when I started out in business when I was a kid, you had Microsoft and they were fighting everybody. Everybody was fighting Microsoft. And if you had two companies, they were fighting each other to the death. And everybody was trying to put everybody out of business. And, that is the old way. Whereas DeFi is very, very collaborative. So it's not about being better than Uniswap and crushing them. It's not about having a better, yield farm than farm, or a better bit of code than X, Y, and Z, or better swapping function than SushiSwap. It's about taking the best ideas and synthesizing them into an ecosystem. Now, I think we're already seeing that different projects are basically merging. They're not even merging. It doesn't seem that they're becoming, under one building and one Fura, but they are pooling their resources, technological, and often, from what I'm seeing, is they're pooling their security knowledge, which is really the Achilles heel of the whole thing. And they are working together in a swarm, rather than trying to be the Tyrannosaurus Rex of their environment. And so I don't think we're even thinking about, we're going to do a better Uniswap than Uniswap. We're going to have more sushi than sushi. We're going to have, greater milk than cream, or anything like that. We're looking to build out a set of complementary products, and where there'll be, in some cases, duplication. But, in many cases, it will be a different coloring, a different twist to a new solution for what's already existing. So, at the moment, there are many, 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 many problems with the way things are done. And we will be addressing some of those very early on, hopefully successfully.
But what are the biggest ones? What are your kind of key things you want to achieve with Umbria?
Well, the key thing we want to achieve with Umbria is a significant ecosystem in DeFi over the next 5 years. And that's how we're thinking about all these things. So we're not thinking small. Yeah. What we are particularly focused on right now is getting transaction costs down. Because right now, unless you are a big swinger, you can't play. I was going through my inventory, as I do as a investor, all the time. And I've got one. Sorry, I've got some noise coming through on my phone.
What is that?
That's my message alert on my phone. Which is, the funny thing is, it's a computer game, sort of sound effects. I think it's from Defender. But when it goes off in a place like an airport, everybody thinks that the aliens have landed and are doing a terrorist attack, which I find amusing. No, machine guns don't sound like that. That's Star Wars. Darth Vader is fiction, by the way, guys. He's not going to terrorize your airport. But anyway, that's another matter. Transaction fees are a very, very chronic issue right now. And I said, I've got this position. It's a couple of thousand. Oh no, I think it was whatever it was. It was worth about $160 because I'd got it a long time ago, and the fees of withdrawing it were $100. So that's basically that money's stuck there. And I've got all sorts of, $25 and $60 stuck in different DeFi platforms, because to get them out would cost me $80. Well, that is a short-term problem. And there will be a long-term solution for that. And we are working on one of those solutions. And that is a clear challenge that I think will be something that will be probably bringing out within the first quarter of the year with our early projects. And we'll be testing that with our. We're very much staging what we're providing in small slices because, I think we're acutely aware that you have to season your technology in this environment because most people have been, hacked effectively. They come out with their platforms, they get hacked. And there's not many people out there that can say we were never hacked. So, I think the best way to approach that is by using seasoned technology and by bringing things out in a very controlled manner. But the first daring part of what we're going to be doing is addressing the transaction fee issue. But then we will be bringing out different features and different functionality over on a rolling basis because once you've seasoned your technology, you can effectively open up a library of different functionality within the environment that you're making. So once you've got a yield farm, for example, you can produce a yield farm for many, many coins without actually necessarily opening yourself up to too much risk. It doesn't stop you then for bringing out other functionality, and there's all sorts of functionality that we will be looking at. And the beautiful thing about DeFi is that it is an environment of so-called Legos. And a Lego is, I could produce a DeFi where you put some Ethereum in and Amazon delivers you a bottle of red wine tomorrow. That could be a product. It's not what I do, but Uber just bought a alcohol delivery company for 1.2 billion, so maybe it is something I should do. But there's an example to facilitate that. There's probably a number of already existing Legos that are open source and working now that you could plug in for that. So, for example, to buy that bottle of wine, you could take a token and swap it for Ethereum and then buy wine. And those Legos are, part of this collaborative thing that's happening, which is very, very exciting. So you can, if you want to, go back to basics and code it all up yourself, line by line, and we certainly got the capacity to do that. But you can also just collaborate. And we're finding that other groups who have wonderful, wonderful stuff are very open to collaboration because there isn't really a huge army of people that have the facilities to be able to do this kind of code. And we are also collaborating with other people and writing stuff for them, which they need, or fixing bugs for them. We've done a few times recently. You got a bug here. Yeah. Well, we fixed it for you. Oh, thank you. But that is great. That is great. I come out of industries where everybody's trying to stab everybody. And, I was in computer games for too long. And, everybody's stabbing everybody there. It's like something out of a Caligula story. It's a terrible place. Whereas in DeFi, there's a huge amount of talent. That's where all the geniuses are right now, are there. And the attitude is very, very, very refreshing and open and collaborative. And I think that's yet another difference that will help bring about this radical change that I think is unstoppable.
One of the issues that I myself have had, and I know puts off a lot of people, even people in the space, let alone people that have never even heard of the term DeFi, is the user experience. So how high up on the list is user experience to what you're making?
Well, I would say slightly arrogantly that that's always high up in our minds because we have a background, A, in computer games a long time ago, and B, in large financial information websites where the barrier of entry has to be quite low. But the DeFi experience is a absolute nightmare, really. It melted my brain for weeks and weeks and months, and it still does every day. Managed to put me into a complete lava. I was, as I say, I throw money at all these projects because you've got to actually put your money on the line to fully understand these things. And there's this fantastic thing called Cover, which has enables you to buy and sell insurance on other DeFi projects that may or may not get hacked. And, they're trying very, very hard to get this thing going. But boy, even as a financial services professional for 20 years, it had me sat there sweating that I hadn't just thrown 10 grand down a raft.
Mm.
And it's an issue of user interface. It's an issue of complexity. It's an issue of really terrible documentation. It's an issue of fragmented communication channels. I mean, I'm sorry, most people don't know that Medium should be the place where you talk to your customer base. And I'm sorry, Discord is really not a customer support line of any note, even though the whole DeFi industry defaults to those two things. And to an extent, that is the industry standard. Now, whether that's ever going to change or whether the Earthlings are going to catch up with that in due course or not is another matter. But it will definitely be a slow move of DeFi into the mainstream, and it won't get there for a decade. I mean, things do not get into the mainstream quickly. I mean, I think the World Wide Web was the fastest, and it took 8 years or something ridiculous like that. And maybe it's something else, but it's like 8 to 10 years is the fastest anything's ever hit the mainstream. And certainly the World Wide Web, I mean, what was the issue there? The issue there was opening a browser and understanding what you were looking at, not getting MetaMask and installing it on your browser and then working out what this huge ugly long number is, and then working out what a Ropsten is and why you shouldn't be on it, etc., 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 etc. So the learning curve is absolutely horrific, and there is massive opportunity there to bring down the barrier of entry. Will it be easy? No. Do we have all the answers? Definitely not. Do we have some? We hope so. But it's a process, and I think everybody again actually, I don't think everybody is working. I think some people realise it, and a lot of people, particularly the super intelligent guys that are obviously have landed from another planet that are involved in a lot of this, they wouldn't understand how you could not find it easy. But
yes, yeah.
I think the Apple attitude of making everything incredibly accessible will be at some point the key to unlocking this. But in the meantime, I'm quite happy to get 10% interest rates on my money while everyone else is getting 0.5. And one of the reasons why you can get 10% is because the old people with the money could never get onto the blooming thing in the first place. And if they did, wouldn't believe it. And if they did, wouldn't be able to click the right button. And
Yes.
that is money belongs to the old in general in financial markets. And I think just about I'm 60 is about as old as it gets when it comes to digital natives. Yeah, I mean, I went digital online digital in the late 80s, but I was in my late 20s at the time, and you get older than me, and you increasingly just do not have an online life. But most of the money lives with the old, so people will be migrating from being young people to older people to make an impact into DeFi, and we've seen that in equities. When I first floated a public company before 2000, and the dot-com bubble crashed, an old broker said to me, "Oh, well, that's it for 20 years, because that's another generation slaughtered, and a new generation has to be born before we're going to get another boom." And lo and behold, here we are. And I think that is going to be an issue. It would take a generation or two for this to become in the mainstream, but it is massively powerful, and that would accelerate this quite dramatically. So I think that's important to realise just how powerful this stuff is and how much of a driver money is.
Talking of the future and looking at how things kind of might look when we get there, if the DeFi movement was starting today, do you still think they would be choosing Ethereum to base it on, or do you think they had to choose that because that was all there was or happened to be the best option at the time?
I think you're talking like an initiate. DeFi is just starting. I mean, DeFi hasn't really started yet. I mean, it is so early. I mean, it's beyond early. I mean, if you take a tech company in Silicon Valley and it does something silly like make bean bags for cats, it's going to be worth 5 billion. Yeah. And these projects, which are world changing, are worth 300 or 400 million. I mean, it's not even, it's not even a significant figure in terms of Silicon Valley technology startups. It is so early. And that's why the numbers are so crazy, because there's nobody here but us chickens. But your question, I suppose, is Ethereum the way to go? And the answer is in crypto. And I think that a lot of the early adopters completely miss this. The key thing is trust. Now, everyone talks about trustless and permissionless and all that good stuff. But boy, do you need trust. Yeah. It's kind of like it's a frontier. Well, it's all well and good having a gun on your hip. Yeah. But ultimately, you need trust. And Ethereum is a great brand. Nowhere near as great as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most massive brand. It's a small thing, but it's got a huge brand. I mean, it's got a brand equivalent to the NFL. Yeah. If you have a financial conference and there's, maybe the head of a central bank talking about saving the Western world from financial collapse, some muppet will stand up and say, "What do you think about Bitcoin?" I mean, the answer from him should be, "Well, that's the wrong decimal point there, mate. It's a nothing to me." Well, I mean, a few of them have said it's a nothing burger over the time. And for now it is, because $1 trillion is the significant figure of finance. And Bitcoin ain't $1 trillion, it's 600 billion. And, a few weeks ago, it was only 200 billion. So, its brand is massively more powerful than its actual size. It is a real baby Godzilla. And, it will become significant probably. But, if you look at gold is $8 trillion of gold out there. And all it's good for is electronic and teeth. Nobody uses for teeth anymore. And so, if something in the real world or the old world, which is, great for trinkets and coins for misers and some electronics, is worth 7 to 8 to 9 trillion. Well, Bitcoin at 600 billion is not a big deal. But the brand punch of Bitcoin is tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And Ethereum is going that way too. It's like a word in most people's vocab, and that is trust. So Bitcoin is incredibly trusted for what it is. It's immensely trusted. And Ethereum is also increasingly trusted. And, they've done some amazing things, the Ethereum group, and they're going through this Ethereum 2 thing, which is, a serious risk. And that's also exciting and thrilling. This whole space is full of amazing things, and that is the energy that's driving this, and will drive it into the mainstream, where it will be huge. And I mean, the funny thing is, it's clear that in many ways, most people, it's the blind leading the blind, and you get people saying, "Oh, what about government digital currencies?" Well, our currencies are digital. Fiat currencies are digital currencies. Paper money and coins is only a tiny tip of the iceberg for the money that's out in the system. And all the rest of that money are digital currencies. They're currencies that are digital. They are values held on a hard drive that spins at 87,000 RPM or whatever it spins at. They are digital currencies. The difference between the digital currency, which is, say, the pound or the dollar, and a cryptocurrency is the cryptography, and it is the permissionless, and it is the decentralization, which, of course, governments would be loath to actually have.
So in terms of the technology itself of Ethereum, it doesn't concern you then that we're building this this empire on something that is still pretty slow, pretty expensive. Obviously, they're working on upgrading that, but as you said, that's a risky business. Does it worry you at all?
Back in the day when I was in computer games, and I was a young buck publishing stuff, I used to look at companies that were writing games that could never possibly run on the equipment that was out there and think, what are they doing? But by the time they'd finished, those machines arrived and they'd have a smash hit because they had this fantastic thing that ran on the latest kit. And, it took me a good 10 years to realize that I was the fool, because the stuff catches up. And where there's a will, there's a way. And I tell you, where there's money, there's a will. And, Ethereum, I think Mr. Butterin keeps saying this, much to people's confusion. He says, "Do it on layer 2. Get on with layer 2. Get on with layer 3. Leave my layer alone." and that's right. That is right, because layer 2 is a solution to many of these problems. And and you can have a layer 3 too, and you can have a layer 4, and you can have a layer 5. it's obviously everybody wants to bash the metal, as I used to want to do back when I was a kid in computer games. You got to bash the metal, but ultimately you end up in a world like today where your computer with a 3080 graphic accelerator in there is running your spreadsheet at pretty much the same speed as when you were running on Windows 95, because it's got multiple layers of abstraction that make life easier for everybody, and those layers of abstraction facilitate what is going on. So, I mean, yes, there are risks to Ethereum. One of which is I hate proof of stake. I think proof of stake is the wrong way, but that's a political judgment, not technical. And yes, if Ethereum were put to the sword, then other blockchains would take up its role, but they don't have the brand. And I don't think if somebody broke Ethereum, somebody would fix it in 30 days. Yeah. And if they broke Ethereum, it wouldn't be broke for more than 10 minutes, because it would just be the older version before they broke it. So I don't think there's going to be an acute situation that would last for long. Chronic problems, well, we've got one now, which is the cost of transactions. But people are getting around it. They're waking up at 5 a.m. to get it when the network's not so busy, etc. I mean, people find a way, and people find not only do it more clever, but they find other ways around it. And layer 2 is the answer, and layer 2 will be an answer. And when the proof of stake thing comes around, it will undoubtedly work, and there'll still be a need for layer 2. And there's still, and then somebody will write some other gadget for Ethereum that will, style everything up, and then someone will have to write another solution for that. That is not a weakness. That is a strength. Now, if you're a corporate and you've got this thing, they're all going to sit around and go, oh, what's the risk? Oh, that's a lot. Oh, scary risk. Oh, let's not do that. No, let's not do that. Oh, let's not do that. And nothing changes. And it's forever locked into a never-changing world, very much like the American car business with their, houses on wheels that people are driving over there. It becomes, corporates are risk adverse, horribly risk adverse. And if you are risk adverse, you can't change much. And not only can't you change, you don't want to change much. Whereas if you take you push your risk envelope out, you get more rewards. And, these are not your average corporate wonks, as I believe they're sometimes called. These are some of the smartest people on the planet doing this stuff. I mean, this is where the geniuses are. The geniuses are always somewhere, and they are in DeFi. This is where the party is. I say to people, doesn't matter about the economy, how bad it is or how good it is, but particularly how bad it is. There's always a party going on somewhere. Trouble is, you're not invited. Yeah, well, the party is DeFi, and well, you're not invited. No one's asking you to go, and even if you do get asked, you probably won't. But there it is. If you want to go to the party, it's DeFi right now. And actually, in a couple of years' time, the party is probably going to be non-fungible tokens. Yeah. And the other thing that totally excites me is everyone goes, "Oh, Bitcoin's great. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing." It's a currency. Well, DeFi are enterprises. That's really exciting. A crypto enterprise. That's very, very exciting. Well, running parallel to that, DeFi is also governance. Well, crypto governance, internet governance, governance at the speed of light, new models of democracy. Now that is dramatically exciting. And what it's showing you, if you want to really, melt your brain, is that crypto and blockchain is a solution to problems that people don't even know they have. And it's an opportunity to things that they don't even know they want. And it's an enabling technology that will go far. I mean, when the first caveman made fire, he didn't realize you could melt steel with it. It took him another 500,000 years to be starting to make iron and steel with that. Yeah. And crypto and blockchain is an enabling technology like fire. It's kind of computer fire, it's internet fire. And what that will unlock is just incredible, because it breaks the pyramidal structure of governance. It breaks the stranglehold that community leaders have over their subjects. And, that flattening of the power structure has massive productivity potential, and that unleashing of potential is dramatic.
So give me an example then. Say if we move 10 to 15 years in the future and things happen as we want and hope and expect them to happen with the DeFi movement, what do you think our lives look like if DeFi moves as we expect it to compared to now? What, in terms of everyday things, what's going to be different as far as you're concerned?
I remember when there were going to be flying cars,
Hmm.
and probably there will be in about 20 years' time, even though you can go to YouTube and see a couple flying now. But the pace of change can actually be glacial. And I know a lot of people keep rabbiting on and have ever since I was a kid about how fast change is these days, and it's getting faster and faster. No, it's not. It's not getting faster and faster. As people get older, their brains get slower and slower, so they feel that the change is accelerating.
Hmm.
Very little has changed since the 1960s. Yeah, we've got the computer. That's great. We've got the mobile phone, but there are already phones. There are already planes. There are already railways. There are already most things that we live in are cars, antibiotics. The great acceleration was between, I don't know, 1890 and the end of the Second World War. So I'm not necessarily a believer in rapidity in change, because when I got my first computer, it was 1979. Well, that's 50 years ago right there. No, not 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Sorry, can't count. 41 years ago. But that's a long time. That's almost 2 generations ago. And I don't see a great deal of difference in the world between 1985 and now, apart from house prices and the height of some buildings in Central. So
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily thinking it's going to be a dramatic fast change, but it could be. It could be. What will be different is that a lot of rentiers, it's a political statement more than anything. I think it will dramatically change the political structure of our societies. And with a bit of luck, that will be a very good thing.
So well, it's not a specific answer, but that's your general feeling. Then is that it's gonna kind of flatten some hierarchies.
I don't think people will be walking through doors in Westminster saying aye or nay for a start.
Hmm.
I think that blockchain will quickly get into the political layer, and of course, that's the most important layer that needs change these days, as we can see only if we look over the Atlantic at the American mess. Yeah, and I think that governance is in dramatic shape at the moment, and the system of governance that we have has basically become obsolete because of the development of the internet and the ability for communication to be so much faster than it was when the structure of a democracy that we know and love was formed in the beginning of the 19th century. It's a system based on horseback and steam trains, and we're well past that now. And I think blockchain and cryptography will play a major part in turning that upside down, because people, well, if you've got a more efficient government than the guys next door, you're going to be the dominant power. And that's the history of Britain, because they got a better system of government than anybody else because of Oliver Cromwell, basically. And we then conquer the world because of that. It's all down, economics is all down to efficiency. And the ultimate arbiter of economics is government. And if you've got inefficient government, you've got inefficient economy, you've got an inefficient country. And you only have to look at countries with bad governance to see how crippled they are economically. So the first person to apply this fantastic new technology to their governance, and that's already coming together in the crypto world right now. The first country that starts using that is going to have a major, major economic advantage over everybody else. And all you have to do is do a spreadsheet of compound interest to see. It doesn't take you very long to pull past the pack if you've got 3 or 4% better off than those other guys. It doesn't take you more than a few decades to become the dominant power, even if you're a small island. So I think that the most dramatic impact of blockchain won't be cryptocurrency and DeFi, which is economics. It's always going to be at the top level, which is politics, because politics is the ultimate level. And unfortunately, it produces the most unpleasant behaviour, it would appear at the moment.
It does.
So that's where I would see with DeFi. Well, I just think that it reverses the entropy of money flow, and it therefore changes the fact that money is distributed in a Pareto curve. 20% of the people have 80% of the money. Yeah, 20% of your problems are cause 80% of your hassle. Whatever you do, you can turn it upside down or all the way around you like. Yeah. So with money, 20% of the people have 80% of the money, and 80% of the people have 20%. And why is that? Well, it's because it's a function of the bell curve, which is a function of the random behavior of things, which is a function of the random behavior of the world. So money actually collects in the top 20%. However, if you take 20% of 20%, that 80% of 80% of the money belongs to 20% of the 20%. So 4% owns 64% of the money.
Mm-hmm.
So now you do that again, 1% own 50%. And that's why you get super rich. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because our system funnels money uphill. Yeah. It's just the way that it is. It's not any great conspiracy or anything. It's just the structure of the way things work. And that's a function of gatekeeping. And gatekeeping, humans have gatekeepers at every level, and the money flows up to the gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers of the gatekeepers get the money flowing up to them. The gatekeeper of the gatekeepers get even more money. Yeah. So in the end, you end up with 1% of 1% owning 25% of all the money, and you can see that's not a great thing, and that's what a lot of political people complain about. But I believe that crypto, blockchain, and encryption actually delays a lot of those gatekeepers, and therefore removes that function of money flying uphill. Because as we all know, work flows downhill and money flows uphill. I believe, from my experience with crypto, that it reverses that. Trouble goes uphill, and money comes downhill in crypto. And people can just test that out. They can just play with it and see if they make money. Because I tell you, try playing with stocks and shares, and you'll end up without shirt on your back.
Why do you think it is that governments are so keen to ban and to warn against movements like crypto, movements like DeFi, rather than trying to educate people and to say, you know what, if you want to do it, you need to educate yourself here first? Like, why do you think their initial response is to go, no, don't do it, rather than, well, yeah, do it responsibly?
Bureaucracies always hate work and risk. And blockchain is a bit of both. It's a lot of risk and quite a lot of work. So they don't like it. And they don't like any risk, and they don't like any work. The moment you cry foul on anything, oh, do you realize biro pens are lethal weapons? They'll ban them because it's risk. Yeah. And if you get rid of something, there's no work. So, or you just have a special department of making sure ballpoint pens aren't available. And that's what bureaucracies do. They do it everywhere. They don't like risk. They hate risk, and they really don't like work. So, blockchain is going to be something that they don't like. If you look at the internet, they love that because they could goof off watching, going on the World Wide Web and reading the news. So everybody loved that. They didn't want to ban that. And that got under the radar because everybody was enjoying it. Well, blockchain's weaknesses is not necessarily enjoyable. It's money after all. And therefore, it's a scary thing. And it's full of risk and it's full of work. And so they are going to be, rather slow to come forward on it. But I think that people, the real smart people in government, and there are some, and in fact, they are mainly in the money end of town because that's what makes the whole thing go round, and you can't have dumb people in the money section. They realize that, if they don't embrace blockchain and crypto, the competitors, and they do see the world through, state competition. Their competitors will have them. And, they don't like that. I mean, the reason they spend all that money on bombs and soldiers for no apparent reason is because they like to, extend their power. They like to show how powerful they are. Well, if they haven't got the latest financial weapon, they're going to be in difficulty, aren't they? So I don't think they are going to, that no one's going to cancel out the blockchain and crypto anytime soon. They will go through a series of agonizing decisions to let it blossom. And the countries that let it blossom will have massive financial powerhouses. And the ones that don't will, end up in the backwater. And the world's full of countries in the backwater.
In the past, we've seen masternodes come and go. We're yet to see proof of staking really benefit anybody but the large kind of whales that are doing it. Do you think that liquidity pooling is something that could offer a reasonable passive income, like for the first time in the crypto space?
The way that I see it is, I think that the automatic market making systems that are out there are very interesting because, again, they turn the current system inside out. Now, the market makers, be that Citadel in the US, who are suffering somewhat reputationally at the moment because of Wall Street bets on Reddit, and the market makers
Mm-hmm.
in the UK, who are famously not liked by those who are on the other side of that business, turns their business inside out. It enables everybody to be a market, and that will work just as well for equities as it does for crypto. So that is an example of an innovation that has legs beyond crypto and in normal assets. So that's fabulous. And I think that there's back to politics, and unfortunately, it's the master level. I
Mm.
see proof of stake and proof of stake as oligarchy. It's an oligarchy, and we know what happens next, right? We don't need many lessons in oligarchy. Nobody likes that apart from oligarchs, and it's not surprising that people in that space have a moment of epiphany where they go, "Oh, I've just given away hundreds of millions. That could have been my money. Oh, what have I done? Oh, oh no, proof of work. What a stupid idea that was. I could have just put all
Mm.
my coins in a proof of stake and got all the money. Oh no." And I think that epiphany is also happening to some people in DeFi, and they've gone, "Oh, but I've
Mm-hmm.
got this fantastic thing, and I'm giving away all the money to the stakeholders. What am I doing? I should be giving it to me." And you've seen various people pivot away from economic democracy and go much more towards the oligarchy. Well,
Mm.
I don't think that's going to pan out. I could be wrong because there are benefits to oligarchy, in as much as you have strong leadership or a stronger leadership. And there are weaknesses to anarchy or systems that tend towards anarchy, which is that they break down at a certain in certain areas that people don't want to be involved in. I remember going to an anarchist squat once many years ago. It was fabulous, and they were selling beer for 50p and all the ratatouille you could eat for 50 pence, and there were bands playing and comfy chairs to sit in, and lovely ladies wandering around being kind of cool and groovy, and it was fabulous. But it all broke down at the toilets because none of the anarchists wanted to fix the toilets or clean the toilets. And that is why we have oligarchies and dictatorships and totalitarian systems, because dictators tell you to clean the bloody toilets or else. And
Mm.
someone has to get told to do that because no one wants to do it. And so
Mm.
there's an arc of usefulness, utility between the totally decentralized and the totally centralized. But I do think that the result is very much towards the decentralized. And you can see the problem because what the number one problem I think in crypto right now are the criminals who try to
Mm.
hack you, right? And the internet for that matter. I mean, not a day goes by I don't get 4 people trying to hack me. Yeah, and that's the ones I know about. Yeah, and I think
Mm.
everybody's getting 3 or 4 letters trying to hack you. Oh, open this file so I can rob your bank. Yeah, and
Mm.
and that is the trouble with decentralization. The criminal element, which is only a tiny group. I mean, it's likely not to be even 2.5%. It might even be 0.0025% of people. It might only be 100 of those people on the internet doing 90% of all that criminal stuff. But nonetheless, they threaten the whole system and cause massive
Mm.
costs to try to keep those small evil people out. And of course, an anarchy is not very good at doing that because nobody wants to sort them out. They want someone else to do that. Whereas a more authoritarian system is quite happy to go around and crack heads. So
Mm.
that there is an argument for both poles, but I think that oligarchies. Well, I think the sweep of history shows that a more decentralized model is more benign than a group of whales controlling the revenue, and also quite often pretending that they don't, and that's even more nauseating. So I think that's
Mm.
the big risk function for Ethereum, frankly, is that they might mess up that move by ending up with a oligarchy. But
Mm.
hopefully all those super brains over there have got that one worked out. And the whales that are controlling the proof of stake won't actually be 2 or 3 people with lots of Ethereum. And it will actually be a large collegiate of a few thousand representatives. And that would be fine, I think.
Yeah. You have mentioned you're an experienced man in the space through various kind of technological advances that you've seen. So where does blockchain and I guess specifically DeFi sit in the development scale? Are we talking the creation of the credit card, or are we talking the removal of the gold standard? Which end does DeFi and blockchain sit in terms of potential impact?
Well, I mean, I like to think of these things in simple terms because that stops one getting easily confused. DeFi is about efficiency. That's it. Because when a investment bank is stripping your pension fund, or when your local bank is charging you 2% to send some currency from one end of the world to the other, it's just inefficient. Now, yes, they might feel they need that money, but then they got these big buildings that letting off more CO2 than a herd of elephants, and it turns out, well, apparently in the last year they don't need them at all. So DeFi efficiency doesn't matter what you look at. It's all about, I mean, you can look at it in terms of slightly Marxist theory, which is the world is just people taking mud and making stuff out of mud, and it's how efficiently you do that drives the whole process. People plus mud equals stuff, and the less efficient you are of turning mud with people into stuff, the poorer you are. And if the society wants to be rich and successful and prosperous, it has to be efficient. And the more efficient it can be, the more prosperous it will be. And, if you think about there's like 500 crypto exchanges out there. There's only about 7 stock exchanges worth a damn. Yeah, because the way that they do it is really difficult and really hard and is old fashioned. And all these exchanges that you see that proliferate all left, right, and center clearly demonstrates it's much more efficient to run an exchange, whether it's a stock exchange or a currency exchange, that way. And how many of these DeFi platforms that you see are not actually banks? They're banks. They're not only banks, they're fractional reserve banks. And you can't have a bank of that sophistication. If you go and grab a load of people out of Citibank and say, build me one of them, they'll be charging you $1 billion. Easy. Right? But you could probably throw one up with 3 programmers out of college in 6 weeks. Yeah. So that is just about efficiency. And the more efficient you are, the more gatekeepers you can take out of the loop because of technology. The more resources you have to spend on other things, on better things, on higher levels of activity. I mean, when you have to spend your whole day just to keep warm and feed your family, that's it. That's called the world 2,000 years ago. Yeah. And as we become more efficient at making food, making tools to make more food, etc., 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 so we can have all the marvelous things we have today. We can start living to 82 years old rather than 47, and we can invent our medicines and we can invent our aeroplanes, etc. And it's just about efficiency. And DeFi and crypto is a fabulous tool for efficiency on many, many, many levels and in many, many categories. And pretty much, if you can do it with pencil and paper, because it's just a database, right? It's just a database structure. If you're doing it with a database today, you will be able to do it in the future with blockchain in a way that's way more efficient. Now, Luddites would hate that idea. They would say, oh, but what's everyone going to do? But we do know that when you release people from boring work, they find slightly more interesting work to do. And so, the automation of, again, paperwork and the decentralization of that paperwork using light speed technology and computing, that is just a fabulous unleashing of potential. And I think that's incredibly important.
We're coming towards the end now. We haven't really touched on Umbria a huge deal. It's mainly been a bit of a DeFi heavy conversation, which is understandable. So before we go, why don't you just give us a brief rundown of what's in the pipeline, what your roadmap looks like, what 2021 looks like for you?
Well, right now we are working on our first airdrop because we have a I mean, what we're doing is we're collecting up a group of engaged people, because
Hmm.
this whole area is about engagement, and we're reaching out to other projects and forming relationships with them. And we've built quite a lot of technology, but we don't plan to go, here you go, bang, here's 47 pieces of functionality, see if they all work for us, will you? So the roadmap currently is to build out the established liquidity pool, staking, well, airdrop, staking, um, then liquidity pools, then swaps, and then we, at that stage, once we have that nice um, platform effectively, which should be, I mean, I don't want to say too much, because if you ever predict a release of software, you're always going to appear a fool.
Oof, yeah.
That rollout will be this year, and I'm hoping it will be, not Christmas. I mean, the old one,
Yes.
my
Yeah.
favorite joke is when I say, well, when's it going to be ready then? And they say September. I would say, which September? But that initial platform will be the rollout. It's a format that most people will have seen who know DeFi and will understand. But from that point onwards, we're hoping that it will have a layer that will bring various DeFi difficulties in check, or at least calm them a little bit. Or we're hoping we produce something that's more user friendly, dramatically more user friendly. And I don't think that's actually difficult, because I think, well, actually, there is a difficulty in it, because one of the major barriers to this is these things are not being explained. These things are not being documented.
Mhm.
These things are these the facts that people are putting up are lamentable in many instances. Now, I've set myself up to having a set of lamentable facts now, but we will try our very, very best to explain it like I'm five as much as possible, which is quite a challenge, because it's often these things are very, very convoluted anyway. So there's
Mhm.
a deconvolution effort that we'll be putting into the initial platform. We will be trying to bring the transaction costs down, and I think we've got some good innovations there. We will be attempting, and I hope succeeding, in bringing in a community who will then be effectively our sounding board and our steering on which way we should go. And there's always a dialogue between development and user base. And we're used to that, because I come from building ADVFN, and we come out of Investors Hub in the US, which are community-driven projects from the dot-com boom period. So we've spent the last 20 years being pushed from pillar to post by our communities. And so we're quite used to being able to handle that without getting upset at everybody and
Yeah.
going off in a huff, which some people seem to find quite difficult. And I can understand that. I've been there myself, wanting to go off in a huff when the community tells you you're wrong, and you know you're not, but you are.
Mhm.
But that is something that I think we will be of value add. But I also think there's some other ideas that we have, which I would be a bit brave to talk about now, because they are a ways away, which will be novelties. Now, we
Mhm.
over the years have done a lot of novel stuff in various areas, and we are interested in doing novelties, because ultimately, if you can bring a new functionality to an area and no one else has done it, you're going to get a big lift off from that, as long as the people can understand what the level you're doing. I mean, I think that is, once we've got our platform, there'll be a mix of us actually working on what other people are working on and trying to do it better, and a mix of doing stuff that no one's done before. That might be a great idea and might not be such a great idea. You never really know until you've done them. And OBC, which is the kind of the mothership for this, has just raised a nice chunk of change in the public markets to be able to put on development resources. And we are an open door for anybody who lives, breathes, and loves and can code a crypto project. We are an open door
Mhm.
for that on really pretty much any level that people want to talk to us on. As we're talking to very large players, and we're talking to individuals. So we're totally open, because we feel very collaborative, and we think that collaboration is the way, because ultimately decentralized, while it's not necessarily an anarchy, is very much a loose cell system, a network of assets, and
Mm-hmm.
that has very exciting potential. It's pretty much untried. I mean, there have been times, like people like Gandhi have used a loose affiliation, but ultra commitment of people in a good way in things. So it's not unprecedented, but it is a asymmetrical way of doing things. Because when you think about the established players in the areas which DeFi is going into, these are huge corporations worth billions, multiple billions, with huge resources behind them and masses of highly skilled people. And yet, where are they? I mean, I'm bumping into JP Morgan people that had a blockchain project that JP Morgan shut down. I mean, how stupid is that? JP Morgan actually has a pool of talent in blockchain, which is totally risk wiping them out in the next 20 years, or certainly doing for them what the internet did for newspapers. And yet they've, shut it down. In fact, that's the kind of thing that Murdoch used to do. He used to buy internet companies and go, oh, no, I don't understand that, mate, and shut them down. and in the end, his newspaper business is no longer a significant issue for him.
Yes, it only gets you so far, that attitude, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I suppose he never could get to grips with it. It never worked in his head. And, I suppose it is a fact that media companies, and I always think that money is media, find it very, very difficult to go from old media to new media. And book publishers don't get into computer games, and movie companies didn't really get into TV business until way late, and theatres didn't get into cinemas, etc., etc., etc. The record companies didn't get into out of being a record company. Media companies tend to get stuck in their rut until they wither, or wither, really.
Absolutely. We're going to leave things there, Clem. Thank you so much for speaking to me tonight. You've really kind of opened my eyes into the potential that DeFi has and the scale that it could reach that I wasn't quite sort of aware of before. So thank you certainly for that. And really excited to see what you've got down the line for Umbria, to see whether you can tackle this beast of the scaling and the fees. I think that's something we're all waiting for. So I really hope you can achieve that.
Well, I think the components are there. But the thing that I keep telling people is that this is just the very beginning. The money to be made from investing in this area is really incredible, but you have to skill up. You have to really study a lot. It's not something that you should jump into imagining you're going to miss out, because although you might miss out on the incredible run we're probably going to get in the next 7 days, it's the beginning. And it doesn't matter whether Bitcoin goes back to $12,000 a coin and Ethereum goes back to $400 a coin. It doesn't matter, because this is just the beginning. It's just the beginning of a very long road of huge amounts of value being added to the economy and to these projects. And I think that's important. There's no great hurry for anybody listening to this stuff. I would advise against jumping head first. I say you've got plenty of time. Study this area for 12 months. And if you can put up with that, at the end of that period, you will be sufficiently skilled to do incredibly well in the next 5, 10, 20 years. And that's really, for me, the exciting thing. This will see me out. And, there's a long road of great returns ahead for anybody that's prepared to do their homework.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. Yeah, brilliant. Clem, thanks very much for your time, and all the best with Umbria and all your other projects in the future.
Thanks very much, Mark.
My thanks to Clem Chambers for speaking to me tonight. If you want to know more about Umbria and what their plans are for the future, you can find them at umbria.network, and their Twitter handle is @networkumbria. If you enjoyed this episode of the Fully Crypto podcast, please like and subscribe on your platform of choice, and you can drop us a line at FullyCrypto on all the social media channels. We've got more cracking guests lined up for you in the coming weeks, so as Aerosmith sort of sang, you won't want to miss a thing. Thank you, and I'll speak to you again soon.